Mexico is struggling with a lot of violence from cartels. These criminal groups are a big problem. They sell drugs, extort people, and smuggle people. Their violent actions scare communities and make whole areas unsafe. The Mexican government is having a tough time fighting these powerful, well-armed groups. The violence is really bad, with thousands of people dying every year. Regular people often get hurt, which makes everyone afraid, and the criminals don't get punished. The cartels have a lot of power in Mexico. They bribe officials, threaten reporters, and break the law. They have so much money that they get away with their crimes. The Mexican government has sent the army to fight the cartels, but it hasn't helped much. The cartels have powerful weapons, spies, and local supporters, making them very hard to stop. The violence hurts Mexico's economy, stopping businesses from investing, scaring away tourists, and causing unrest. The cartels' power comes from poverty, inequality, and corruption. The government, ignoring the problem for years, has let these groups grow. Many young people join cartels because they don't have other ways to make money. The cartels offer them a way to get rich and powerful, but it's a dangerous and violent life. Mexico is located between countries that make drugs and a big market for drugs in the US. This makes the problem worse. Drugs, guns, and money moving across the US-Mexico border fuel the violence. The US is the biggest buyer of the drugs, so it shares some of the blame. The demand for drugs gives the cartels money to operate, bribe officials, and buy weapons. The US has helped Mexico fight cartels, but more needs to be done to fix the real problems causing the violence. When Claudia Sheinbaum became president of Mexico in 2024, things started to change in the fight against organized crime. Sheinbaum, a scientist and former mayor of Mexico City, promised to do things differently. The previous president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, tried to be nicer to the cartels, saying he'd offer hugs, not bullets. People thought this was a nice idea, but it didn't stop the violence. Sheinbaum is tougher on the cartels. She promised to enforce the law and punish the criminals. Her government has made changes to strengthen police, fight corruption, and help federal and state authorities work together. One of Sheinbaum's main goals is to give the military and police more money, better equipment, better training, and more resources. Sheinbaum is also trying to fix the social and economic problems that make people join cartels. Her government has started programs to create jobs, improve schools, and give young people in poor communities better chances. Sheinbaum is working hard to fight corruption. She wants to get rid of officials who work with cartels and stop the government from keeping order. She has created new ways to fight corruption and made existing anti-corruption groups stronger. Not everyone agrees with Sheinbaum's methods. Some say her tough tactics will make the violence worse and could lead to human rights abuses. Others think focusing on law enforcement doesn't fix the real problems like poverty and inequality. Even with these criticisms, Sheinbaum is determined to stop the cartels and bring peace to Mexico. Whether she succeeds or fails will be very important for Mexico's future. The cartel situation in Mexico is always changing, with groups making and breaking alliances, new groups forming, and older groups fighting for power. When Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, the leader of the Sinaloa cartel, was arrested in 2016, it caused a lot of fighting and violence as different groups tried to take his place. The Sinaloa cartel, once the most powerful cartel, has broken into smaller groups, each wanting control of the drug trade and territory. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJN, is known for being very violent and well organized. They've become really powerful in the last few years. Led by Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, also known as El Mencho, the CJN has taken over more land and gained more power. They control drug routes, extort people, steal fuel, and smuggle people. The CJN's quick rise to power has been very violent as they try to get rid of rivals and become even stronger. The CJNG's power comes from making alliances, using weaknesses in Mexico's security, and being ruthless. They bribe officials, sneak into law enforcement, and get powerful weapons. The CJN's extreme violence scares people all over Mexico. They want to scare their enemies, silence anyone who disagrees with them, and stay in control. With older cartels breaking up and new ones forming, Mexico's security situation is even more complicated and dangerous. More armed groups mean more violence as they fight for territory and resources. The Mexican government is having a hard time fighting these groups. These groups often have local support, use weaknesses in security, and operate freely in remote areas. The changing cartel situation needs a flexible security plan that addresses the real problems causing this mess. Selling drugs is still how cartels make most of their money, but they've started doing other illegal things, which makes Mexico even more unstable. This is happening for a few reasons: new opportunities, the government cracking down on drug trafficking, and the cartels wanting different ways to make money. Extortion is a big moneymaker for cartels. They target businesses, regular people, and even government officials. Cartels also steal fuel from pipelines and refineries. This costs the Mexican government billions of dollars and causes fuel shortages and higher prices for everyone. Smuggling people and migrants has become very profitable. Cartels take advantage of migrants trying to get to the United States. They treat the migrants terribly, taking their money, forcing them to work, and sometimes even killing them. Cartels are also involved in illegal mining, especially for gold and iron ore. They ignore rules and bribe officials to take resources and ship them out of the country. This hurts the environment and takes money away from the Mexican government. Because cartels do so many different illegal things, it's harder for law enforcement to stop them. If one activity gets shut down, they just switch to something else. This also makes them more involved in everyday life in Mexico. They control important services, extort businesses, and terrorize communities. This makes it harder to fight them without hurting the economy and society. Because cartels are doing so many different crimes, the government needs a bigger plan to stop them. This plan needs to address the problems that let these groups thrive, like corruption, impunity, and the lack of jobs. Section 5. A dangerous game. The specter of US military intervention. More cartel violence in Mexico and more fentanyl coming across the US border has made some people want the US to get more involved. When the Trump administration labeled some Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, people worried the US might take military action. This label gives the US government a lot of power to go after these groups, like freezing their money, restricting their travel, and even using the military against them. Mexico says this label violates its sovereignty, but the Trump administration said it's needed to protect US security. The US has already sent more military to the border and has given Mexico intelligence and training to fight the cartels. However, some US officials think the US military needs to do more to stop these groups. The idea of the US military going into Mexico is a very sensitive topic. Some think it's necessary to stop the drugs and violence, but others worry it will make things worse, causing more fighting, making Mexico unstable, and hurting the relationship between the US and Mexico. Military action is very risky. Civilians could get hurt, Mexico's sovereignty could be violated, and the US could face retaliation. It's also not clear if the military can fix the real problems causing the cartel issue, like poverty, corruption, and weak government. The US needs to think carefully about what might happen and try other solutions first, like working better with Mexico, reducing drug use in the US, and helping Mexico strengthen its institutions and address the root causes of the violence. Section 6. High-stakes potential consequences of US military action. If the US military goes into Mexico alone, it could have many serious consequences. Some people think it would stop the cartels and the flow of drugs and violence, but it could also cause a lot of unintended problems. One big worry is that it could make the fighting much worse, starting a bigger war between the US military, Mexican security forces, and many cartels. This would cause a lot more violence, which would be terrible for regular people caught in the middle. Another big worry is that civilians could get hurt. Even carefully planned military operations can hurt innocent people. Because cartels often hide among regular people, the chance of civilian casualties is high. If civilians get hurt, it would make Mexicans angry at the US, which would help the cartels and make it harder to stop them in the long run. Also, if the US military goes into Mexico alone, it would be seen as disrespectful to Mexico, which would hurt the relationship between the two countries. This could make it harder for them to work together on things like security, migration, and trade. Mexico might become less friendly to the US, making it harder to solve shared problems. The cartels might retaliate against the US by attacking US citizens, businesses, or embassies in Mexico. They could also use anti-American feelings to cause violence or hurt US interests in the area. The possible consequences of US military action in Mexico are complicated and serious. Any decision to use the military must consider the risks and try to avoid harming civilians, the US-Mexico relationship, and long-term stability in the region. Section 7. Beyond the battlefield. Addressing the root causes. Using the military might stop cartel violence for a little while, but to really fix the problem, we need to address the reasons why these groups exist in the first place. Poverty, lack of opportunity, and government corruption are some of the main reasons people join cartels. Fixing these problems is important for stopping the violence and building a better future for Mexico. Investing in education, jobs, and social programs is important for giving young people other choices besides crime. Creating jobs in poor communities can make joining a cartel less appealing and help people build better lives for themselves and their families. Making sure laws are followed and fighting corruption are also important. Cartels are powerful because they can break the law without getting punished. They bribe officials, threaten witnesses, and stop justice. Fixing law enforcement and the courts, stopping corruption and punishing corrupt officials are important steps in making things fair and making people trust the government again. Another important part of the solution is reducing drug use in the United States. As long as people in the US want to buy drugs, cartels will keep selling them and causing violence. Reducing drug use through education, treatment, and harm reduction programs can hurt the cartel's business and make it harder for them to operate. To really fix the problem, we need a plan that includes security measures, social and economic programs, anti-corruption efforts, and ways to reduce drug demand. This is how we can achieve real peace and security in Mexico. Section 8. Navigating the Labyrinth. The role of international cooperation. Solving the complicated problem of cartel violence in Mexico requires countries working together. International cooperation is important for sharing information, working together on law enforcement, stopping money laundering, and addressing the root causes of the problem. The United States, as Mexico's neighbor and a major market for drugs, must help. Besides security cooperation, the US can help Mexico strengthen its government, grow its economy, and fix the problems causing the violence. This includes giving money, sharing knowledge, and helping to train people in law enforcement, judicial reform, and anti-corruption efforts. Working with other countries in the region is also important. Cartels operate across borders, using weaknesses in regional security and differences in laws. Better regional cooperation, sharing information, and coordinating law enforcement operations can disrupt cartel networks and prevent them from taking advantage of legal loopholes. International organizations like the United Nations, the Organization of American States, and Interpol can also help countries fight organized crime. They can provide technical assistance, help share information, promote best practices, and gather resources to support countries working to solve this global problem. Solving the cartel problem requires a multifaceted approach that involves not only governments but also community groups, businesses, and regular people. By working together, the international community can help create a safer and more prosperous future for Mexico and the region. Section 9. A path forward towards a safer and more secure Mexico. Making Mexico safer and more secure is a long and difficult process. It requires continued effort, political will, and a comprehensive approach that addresses the many challenges posed by organized crime. There's no quick fix for a problem so deeply connected to poverty, corruption, and weak institutions. However, by using a strategy that combines security measures with social and economic development, Mexico can make real progress towards stopping cartels and bringing peace to its communities. Strengthening law enforcement and the judicial system is very important. This includes giving security forces the resources, training, and equipment they need, and also making sure corrupt officials are removed. It's also important to reform the judicial system so it's independent, efficient, and able to punish criminals. Addressing impunity and ending corruption are crucial for making people trust the government again and making things fair. Investing in education, creating jobs, and supporting social programs is essential for giving young people options other than crime. Reducing poverty and giving people opportunities can make joining a cartel less appealing and empower individuals to build a better future. Addressing drug demand, both in Mexico and internationally, is crucial for weakening the cartels. This requires a plan that includes prevention, treatment, and harm reduction strategies, as well as addressing the social and economic factors that contribute to drug addiction. Finally, international cooperation is essential for effectively fighting transnational criminal organizations like Mexican cartels. Sharing intelligence, coordinating law enforcement efforts, and providing mutual legal assistance are essential for dismantling cartel networks and bringing criminals to justice. By following these strategies with strong commitment, Mexico can create a brighter future, free from the control of organized crime and violence.